Alright, so today I'm going to show you how to make a Celtic weave, which we're going to do on these two sides, and then we're going to do, after we complete that, a centipede down the middle. Okay, so for this, my two boards have a total of 5 holes each. So all of my holes are 1/4 inch in from the spine edge. Okay, on each side, mine happen to be 3/4 of an inch in. I have the two Celtics an inch apart, and then this structure actually only needs 1 hole for the centipede, though you could do multiple centipedes in which you'd have multiple holes for whichever one you want. So like I mentioned, this is kind of a two-part binding structure in which we'll do 2 Celtic weaves simultaneously on either side, and only once those are complete will we do another stitch down the middle, so the whole book will be together when we do the final one. Okay, so I have all my paper stacked up, my holes punched. I'm going to set some of my boards aside, okay, and I'm going to take my first signature and I'm going to set it on top, and I'm going to take you through this step by step. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is show you some threads that I have. Okay, now there are different ways you can approach this. One way would be to do just kind of one pairing all the way up and then do the other, but as we've talked about with our double needle Coptic, it can be challenging to do that, in my opinion, because it can be hard to keep the board tight. So I like to do both sections on either end at one time. I'm going to use different colors to do my Celtics. Okay, so I actually have 4 threads prepared. So for each kind of station, A and B and D and E, I'm going to do both a blue color and it's like a salmon color. You'll notice that for one thread, my thread isn't too long. I can always add more to it if I need, but I don't want to get it knotted. And you'll notice that even though I have one blue thread, I have 2 needles, one attached to either end. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my first signature, and I'm going to place a weight down on the inside of that signature. Okay, the first, as you learn from the double needle, it's always, the beginning is always a little harder with the start of a book because we haven't gotten into a rhythm yet. Okay, so I have my signature open, and I'm going to place my first needle through that hole A, and I'm going to place my second needle through hole B. So I am inside signature 1, and I am deciding I want to start with the blue thread, and I want my book to be uniform, so I'm going to pull a blue thread when I do D and E as well. So I'm going to keep that fairly even as I can, and I have D and E pulled on the inside like so. Okay, and then I'm going to just simply repeat that with the other prepared blue thread, a needle on each side. And I'm going to take one needle through where I have hole D and another needle through hole E. And I'm going to pull both those needles through. Okay. Now you'll notice that my book is at the edge of the table. That's what I prefer. And in the beginning, I'm actually going to bring that book forward a little bit so that the holes for the book board are accessible through the bottom. Okay, so those are both through. You'll notice blue thread and blue thread. And now I'm going to attach them to the board. So I'll start at hole A for you, though I don't suppose it really matters what hole I start at, because it's going to be the same process. The thread is going to stay on the outside, okay, of my book board. I'm going to just bring this tape back a little so it doesn't get stuck under there. So the thread's going to stay on the outside. I am going to bring my needle up underneath through that hole. You'll notice it's peeking through right now. And I'm going to keep it on the inside. And you'll notice I like to use curved needles for these types of binding. I think it's just a little easier to use them. So I'm going to pull that through. So now you'll notice the thread wraps around the board and is on the inside. And I'm going to repeat that process with hole B, but I'm going to work a little bit in reverse. So the thread will come through the hole, okay, and I'm going to keep it on the inside of that. So we have like a mirrored symmetry happening with those two threads. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure it's tight on the inside. Now is my chance to do that, okay? I'm going to make sure that's pulled tight on the inside. It's a little loose. Okay. And once that's pulled tight, I am actually going to wrap it around that thread. So right now the thread is on the left side. I'm bringing the needle over from the right side and wrapping it fully around. Oops, I actually accidentally took my needle through that thread and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to just try to undo that. I don't want to knot this early in the game. Okay. So now I'm all set. Okay. And you'll notice that when I do that, I create almost like a little bead or knot right there. And that helps keep everything tight. So this thread is on the right side. I'm going to take my needle from the left side and bring it over and kind of it fully around. And I will pull it. And I create a little bead there as well. Creates just a little bead of thread. And then for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to put my tape back down so that you can clearly see what threads those, or what holes those are, excuse me. I'm going to repeat that process on this side. You'll notice that even though my holes are 1/4 of an inch in from the edge of the spine, my paper or my signature for my text block really is going to abut the edge of that board. So I'm going to take my needle associated with the thread for hole D and I am going to bring it underneath and I'm going to keep it on the inside. Ooh. Let me pull back that tape. The last thing we need is for that to get stuck down there. And I'll put it back on for you. I'm then going to take my needle associated with that final hole E and I'm bringing it through. You can do this binding with straight needles. Like I said, for me it's just a personal preference. I find the curved needles are a little easier. I make sure my thread is tight on the inside. I'm going to, since I'm on right now the left side, I'm going to take that thread over and bring my needle from the right side back over to the left. And wrap it around fully. Okay, I'll repeat that process with D. So I'm on the right side I bring the needle over from the left side and wrap it fully around that external thread, and I'm going to pull it tight, and it creates that little bead. So by creating that little bead, we're helping to hold the first signature into place with the text block, which is what we want. Okay. Now I can push my book back a little bit onto the table. Okay. So right now these threads are kind of set aside, and what I'm actually going to do is close that signature. I always make sure that when I place a new sheet of paper on, I am lining it up. Sometimes orientation does matter depending on your holes. Make sure you just keep the stack in order. And I'm lining it up so that I have even borders on the three sides of my text block. I'm going to open this up. This is signature 2. I'm using a pretty standard paper here. I believe it's about 70 pounds. And because of that, I have 4 signatures, or 4 sheets of paper per signature. So this is signature 2, and I am going to introduce that next color of thread, which is my salmon. Just like the blue thread, even though I have 2 threads, I have a needle to each side of that thread. So I'll be working those at one time. You'll notice that I don't have a knot. That knot will just get in the way when I'm pulling it through holes in